The morning sun cast harsh shadows across the sandy training ground at Naval Amphibious Base Coronado. Maya Rodriguez stood in line with 47 other recruits, her dark hair pulled back in regulation style, chin up despite the butterflies dancing in her stomach. At 24, she was one of only 3 women in this particular basic underwater demolition/SEAL training class, and she could feel the weight of dozens of skeptical stares boring into her back. "Listen up, tadpoles." The voice belonged to Senior Chief Petty Officer James Morrison, a mountain of a man whose weathered face told stories of countless missions and broken recruits. His steel-gray eyes swept across the formation like a predator sizing up prey. "Welcome to the most grueling 6 months of your miserable lives. By the time I'm done with you, most of you will be crying for your mothers and begging to ring that bell." Maya's jaw tightened. She had heard about the bell, that brass symbol of surrender hanging near the training compound entrance. Ring it 3 times, and you were out. No questions asked, no second chances. She had promised herself months ago that she would never touch that bell, no matter what these instructors threw at her. The senior chief continued his intimidating speech, pacing back and forth like a caged tiger. "Some of you think you're special. Some of you think you deserve to be here because you scored high on some test or because you did well in your previous assignments." His eyes lingered on Maya for a moment longer than the others. "Let me tell you something, none of that matters here. Here, you prove yourself or you fail. Period." Behind Morrison stood a line of instructors, each one looking like they could break a person in half without breaking a sweat. Among them was Petty Officer First Class Derek Thompson, whose reputation for making female recruits quit was legendary. His smirk told Maya everything she needed to know about what the next few months would bring. "Rodriguez." Morrison's voice cracked like a whip. "Yes, Senior Chief." Maya responded, her voice clear and strong despite her racing heart. "You think you can keep up with the men in this program?" The question hung in the air like a challenge. Maya knew that every eye was on her, that her response would set the tone for how she would be treated for the duration of the program. She also knew that there was only one acceptable answer. "I know I can, Senior Chief." Morrison's face remained impassive, but she caught a flicker of something in his eyes. Approval? Doubt? She couldn't tell. "We'll see about that, recruit. We'll see about that." The first week was a blur of physical training, classroom instruction, and psychological warfare. The instructors seemed determined to break down every recruit, but Maya noticed they paid special attention to her and the other 2 women. Every mistake was magnified, every success minimized. When she completed a run in record time, Thompson would remind her that she was still 30 seconds slower than the male record holder. When she excelled in water confidence training, another instructor would point out that she needed help lifting some of the heavier equipment. The other recruits were a mixed bag. Some, like Marcus Johnson from Detroit, seemed genuinely supportive and treated everyone equally. Others, like Brad Stevens from Texas, made no effort to hide their belief that women didn't belong in the SEALs. Stevens had played college football and never missed an opportunity to remind everyone of his athletic achievements. "I just don't get why they're lowering the standards," Stevens muttered during their first week as they waited in line for chow. "This used to be an elite unit." "Standards haven't been lowered," Maya replied calmly, not bothering to look in his direction. "We're all here because we met the same requirements." "Yeah, right," Stevens scoffed. "Political correctness run amok, if you ask me." Maya bit back her response. She had heard it all before during her time in the Navy. The assumption that her presence somehow diminished the quality of the unit. The belief that accommodations had been made just for her. The constant need to prove that she belonged. She had learned early on that words were cheap, only actions mattered. The physical training was brutal beyond anything Maya had experienced. 6-mile runs in soft sand, hundreds of push-ups and sit-ups, long swims in cold ocean water, and obstacle courses designed to test every muscle in the human body. The instructors pushed everyone to their limits and, then, pushed harder. During the second week, they faced the dreaded surf torture, lying in the freezing Pacific Ocean while waves crashed over them for what felt like hours. Maya gritted her teeth and focused on her breathing, refusing to let the cold break her concentration. Beside her, she could hear other recruits whimpering and cursing. "This is insane," gasped Peterson, a recruit from Ohio whose lips had turned blue. "How is this even legal?" Maya said nothing, conserving her energy and her voice. She had learned that the instructors were looking for any excuse to single someone out, and complaining was the fastest way to earn their unwanted attention. When they were finally allowed to emerge from the surf, 3 recruits immediately headed for the bell. The sound of it ringing echoed across the compound like a funeral dirge. Maya watched them go without comment, but inside she felt a surge of determination. Each person who quit made her own resolve stronger. The academic portion of the training was equally challenging. They studied explosive ordnance, weapons systems, tactics, and maritime operations. Maya had always been a strong student, and she excelled in these classes despite the physical exhaustion that made it hard to concentrate. Rodriguez seems to think she's smarter than everyone else, she overheard Thompson telling another instructor after one particularly difficult exam where she had scored the highest grade in the class. "Maybe she is," replied the other instructor, which earned him a sharp look from Thompson. Maya pretended not to hear, but the comment stuck with her. She was beginning to understand that excellence would not protect her from criticism. If anything, it seemed to make some of the instructors more determined to find her breaking point. The third week brought log PT, physical training with massive wooden logs that required teams of 6 to 8 recruits to carry, lift, and maneuver. Maya found herself assigned to a team that included Stevens and several of his friends. She suspected this was not a coincidence. "Great," Stevens muttered as they approached their assigned log. "Now we're going to be dragged down." "The only thing dragging this team down is your attitude," Maya replied sharply. She was tired of his constant negativity and veiled insults. "We'll see about that," Stevens shot back. The log weighed over 200 pounds, and maneuvering it through the obstacle course required precise coordination and communication. Maya quickly realized that some of her teammates were deliberately making it harder for her, shifting their grip or changing pace without warning in an attempt to throw her off balance. During one particularly challenging segment where they had to carry the log over their heads while navigating a series of barriers, Stevens and 2 others suddenly shifted their grip, leaving Maya struggling to support more than her share of the weight. Her arms burned and her legs shook, but she refused to let them see her falter. "Having trouble, Rodriguez?" Stevens called out with false concern. Instead of responding, Maya adjusted her position and found a way to better distribute the weight. When they completed the course, she was exhausted but still standing. More importantly, she had proven that she wouldn't be intimidated or sabotaged by her own teammates. That night, as she lay in her narrow bunk nursing sore muscles and bruised pride, Maya pulled up the sleeve of her shirt and looked at the tattoo on her left shoulder. It was an intricate design of a phoenix rising from flames, with detailed feathers and flowing lines that had taken hours to complete. The tattoo artist had been a friend of her father's, and the work was exceptional, far better than the typical military tattoos most service members sported. Maya traced the design with her finger, remembering the day she had gotten it. It had been right before she deployed to Afghanistan, and the phoenix represented her determination to rise above any challenge, to emerge stronger from whatever trials she faced. She had chosen the placement carefully, knowing it would normally be hidden by her uniform but could be revealed when appropriate. The tattoo held special meaning beyond its symbolism. The artist who had created it was Miguel Santos, a former Navy SEAL who had served with distinction before being medically retired after an injury. Miguel had been a friend of Maya's father, who had served in the Marines during the Gulf War. When Maya expressed interest in joining the SEALs, her father had taken her to meet Miguel, who had shared stories of his service and encouraged her to pursue her goal. Miguel had designed the phoenix specifically for Maya, incorporating elements that represented her heritage and her aspirations. The flames contained subtle patterns that reflected her Mexican-American background, while the phoenix's wings included details that symbolized her military service. It was a work of art as much as it was a tattoo, and Miguel had refused payment for his work, saying it was his contribution to her journey. Maya had kept the tattoo covered during her time in the Navy, not out of shame but because she wanted to avoid unwanted attention or assumptions. She had learned that anything that made her stand out as different was likely to be used against her by those who questioned her presence in male-dominated military roles. As she drifted off to sleep, Maya wondered if she would ever have the opportunity to show the tattoo to someone who would appreciate its significance rather than use it as ammunition against her. She didn't know that in a few short weeks, everything would change in ways she couldn't possibly imagine. The fourth week brought the introduction of more advanced water training. They learned to use diving equipment, practiced underwater navigation, and spent long hours in the pool working on combat swimming techniques. Maya had always been a strong swimmer, and she found herself excelling in this phase of training. During one particularly challenging exercise, recruits had to retrieve objects from the bottom of a deep pool while wearing full gear and under time pressure. Many of the men struggled with the task, but Maya completed it efficiently and with time to spare. "Show off," muttered Stevens as she climbed out of the pool. "It's called being good at your job," replied Johnson, who had become one of Maya's few allies in the program. "Maybe you should try it sometime." The tension between different factions within the recruit class was becoming more pronounced as the weeks wore on. The physical and psychological pressure was taking its toll, and personalities were becoming magnified under stress. Some recruits were bonding together, while others were becoming increasingly isolated or antagonistic. Maya tried to stay above the interpersonal drama, focusing on her own performance and her own goals. She had learned that the best way to deal with criticism and skepticism was to let her actions speak for themselves. Every completed exercise, every passed test, every day she remained in the program was a victory against those who doubted her. But she also knew that the real challenges were still ahead. She had heard about Hell Week, the notorious fifth week of training where recruits were pushed to their absolute limits with minimal sleep, constant physical activity, and relentless psychological pressure. Roughly half of all recruits who made it to Hell Week would ring the bell before it was over. Maya was determined not to be one of them. The training continued to escalate in intensity. They learned to handle explosives, practiced small unit tactics, and spent hours studying maritime operations and naval special warfare doctrine. The academic workload was heavy, made more challenging by the physical exhaustion that followed them everywhere. Maya found herself studying late into the night, long after other recruits had given up and gone to sleep. She was determined not to give the instructors any excuse to question her competence or commitment. Every test score, every practical exercise, every evaluation was an opportunity to prove that she belonged in the program. The psychological pressure was perhaps the most challenging aspect of the training. The instructors were experts at finding each recruit's breaking point and then applying pressure until something gave. They used fear, humiliation, exhaustion, and frustration as tools to test mental resilience. Maya watched as recruit after recruit made the walk to the bell. Some left quietly, while others broke down completely before making their decision. Each departure was a reminder of how difficult the program was, but also of how much it meant to be one of the survivors. As the fourth week drew to a close, Maya felt a mixture of pride and apprehension. She had survived a month of the most challenging training she had ever experienced. She had proven to herself and others that she could keep up with and often exceed the performance of her male counterparts. But she also knew that the hardest part was still ahead. Hell Week would test everything she had learned about herself and everything she thought she knew about her limits. It would separate those who truly belonged from those who were just along for the ride. Maya looked at her reflection in the small mirror above her sink as she prepared for bed. Her face was leaner than when she had started, her eyes harder and more determined. The young woman who had arrived at Coronado 4 weeks ago was already a distant memory. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new opportunities to prove herself, and new tests of her resolve. She was ready for whatever came next. The phoenix on her shoulder might be hidden beneath her uniform, but its spirit burned bright within her. She had come too far to quit now. Hell Week arrived like a storm that had been building on the horizon for weeks. Maya woke at 0400 hours to the sound of blank ammunition being fired and instructors screaming through bullhorns. The barracks erupted in chaos as recruits scrambled to get dressed and form up outside. This was it, the legendary week that would separate the warriors from everyone else. "Welcome to Hell Week, tadpoles." Senior Chief Morrison's voice boomed across the compound as recruits stumbled outside in various states of readiness. "For the next 5.5 days, you will get a maximum of 4 hours of sleep total. You will be cold, wet, sandy, and miserable every single moment. Some of you will break. Most of you will break. The question is who among you has what it takes to be a SEAL. Maya stood at attention despite her racing heart, watching as several recruits already looked terrified. The brass bell gleamed in the pre-dawn darkness, seeming to mock them with its promise of relief and failure. The first evolution began immediately, a 4-mile run to the beach in full gear while instructors fired blank rounds and set off explosions around them. Maya settled into her rhythm, focusing on her breathing and pace. Beside her, she could hear other recruits already breathing heavily. When they reached the beach, the real torture began. Surf torture in the pre-dawn darkness, with waves that seemed larger and colder than anything they had experienced before. The instructors made them lie in the surf for what felt like hours, then ordered them out just long enough for hypothermia to set in before sending them back. Maya's teeth chattered uncontrollably, but she forced herself to maintain military bearing. Around her, recruits were shaking so violently they could barely stand. The cold was unlike anything she had ever experienced. It seemed to penetrate not just her body but her very soul. "Rodriguez." Thompson's voice cut through the chaos. "You look comfortable. Maybe we need to make this more challenging for you." Before Maya could respond, Thompson grabbed her by the back of her shirt and dragged her deeper into the surf. A large wave crashed over her head, filling her mouth and nose with salt water. She fought the urge to panic, instead focusing on keeping her footing and maintaining control. "Having fun yet?" Thompson sneered when the wave receded. "Hoya, Instructor Thompson." Maya responded through chattering teeth. Thompson's eyes narrowed, clearly disappointed that she hadn't broken or complained. He released his grip and moved on to torment another recruit. The first day blended into a nightmare of physical challenges, sleep deprivation, and psychological warfare. They carried boats on their heads across miles of sand, performed countless push-ups and sit-ups, and endured more surf torture. The instructors rotated in shifts, ensuring that fresh tormentors were always available to push the exhausted recruits. By the first evening, 8 recruits had rung the bell. Maya watched them go with a mixture of sympathy and determination. Each person who quit made the remaining group smaller and more elite. She was not going to be one of them. The second day brought new challenges. Boat races in the frigid Pacific, where teams of 6 had to paddle their inflatable boats through choppy seas while instructors threw smoke grenades and fired blank ammunition. Maya's team included Johnson, Stevens, and 3 other recruits who had managed to survive the first day. "Stay together," Maya shouted over the wind and waves as their boat crashed through another swell. "Keep the rhythm." Stevens, who had been notably quieter since Hell Week began, actually followed her lead without complaint. The extreme conditions seemed to have a way of stripping away petty grievances and focusing everyone on survival. Their boat finished 3rd out of 8 remaining teams, which earned them a slightly shorter session of punishment exercises. Maya's shoulders burned from paddling, and her hands were raw from gripping the paddle, but she felt a surge of pride at their performance. The second night brought even less sleep than the first. They were allowed to lie down for 2 hours, but the instructors woke them every 30 minutes for random exercises or equipment inspections. Maya learned to fall asleep instantly and wake up completely alert, skills that would serve her well if she made it through the program. Day 3 was when the hallucinations began. Sleep deprivation combined with extreme physical stress started playing tricks on everyone's minds. Maya found herself seeing movement in her peripheral vision that wasn't there, hearing voices that didn't exist, and sometimes forgetting where she was or what she was supposed to be doing. During one particularly challenging evolution, carrying telephone poles across an obstacle course, Maya thought she saw her father standing among the instructors. She blinked hard and looked again, but he was gone. The stress was getting to her more than she had realized. "You okay, Rodriguez?" Johnson asked quietly during a brief break. "Fine," Maya replied automatically, then realized she trusted him enough to be honest. "Seeing things that aren't there." Johnson nodded knowingly. "Me too. Yesterday I thought my college girlfriend was cheering me on during log PT. Your brain does weird stuff when you don't sleep." Their conversation was cut short by another round of surf torture, but Maya felt better knowing she wasn't losing her mind alone. The shared suffering was creating bonds between the surviving recruits that would last for years. By the middle of the 3rd day, more recruits were ringing the bell. The class that had started with 48 people was down to 26. Maya found herself becoming protective of those who remained, even Stevens, who had proven himself to be a solid teammate when it mattered most. The fourth day brought what the instructors called rock portage, carrying their boats and equipment over jagged rocks while waves crashed around them. It was dangerous work that required perfect teamwork and communication. One mistake could result in serious injury or death. Maya's team worked with the precision of a Swiss watch, each member knowing instinctively where the others would be and what they would do. Stevens called out warnings about incoming waves, Johnson spotted the safest path through the rocks, and Maya coordinated their movements with hand signals when the noise made verbal communication impossible. When they successfully completed the evolution without injury or major equipment damage, even Thompson seemed impressed. He didn't say anything positive, but he also didn't find any reason to punish them, which was as close to praise as anyone could expect during Hell Week. That evening, as they sat in the sand waiting for the next evolution, Maya noticed that her tattoo was partially visible beneath her torn and salt-stained shirt. The phoenix seemed to glow in the setting sun, its wings spread wide as if ready to take flight. "That's some serious ink," Johnson observed quietly. Maya quickly adjusted her shirt to cover the tattoo. She had managed to keep it hidden for most of the training, and she didn't want to give the instructors another reason to single her out. "My father knew the artist," she explained briefly. "It means something to me." Johnson nodded respectfully and didn't ask for more details. Maya appreciated that about him. He seemed to understand that everyone had their own reasons for being here, their own sources of strength and motivation. The fifth day of Hell Week brought the final major test, a long-distance ocean swim in rough conditions while carrying equipment. The water was rough, visibility was poor, and the weight of their gear made every stroke a struggle. Maya had always been a strong swimmer, but this pushed her abilities to their limits. Halfway through the swim, she noticed that Peterson, a quiet recruit from Montana, was struggling badly. His stroke had become erratic, and he was falling behind the group. Maya knew that falling too far behind could result in automatic dismissal from the program. Without hesitation, she swam closer to Peterson and began pacing him, offering encouragement and helping him maintain proper form. It cost her energy she could barely spare, but she couldn't watch a fellow recruit fail when she had the ability to help. "Stay with me, Peterson," she called out between strokes. "We're almost there. Keep breathing, keep moving." Peterson managed to complete the swim with Maya's help, and the instructors noted her leadership and teamwork without comment. But Maya caught Morrison watching her with an expression she couldn't quite read. By the time Hell Week ended on Friday afternoon, only 19 recruits remained from the original 48. They were exhausted, beaten down, and transformed. Maya felt like she had been through a fire that burned away everything weak or unnecessary, leaving behind only the essential core of who she was. "Congratulations, tadpoles," Morrison announced as they stood in formation, swaying with exhaustion but still on their feet. "You have survived Hell Week. This does not mean you are SEALs. This does not mean you will graduate from this program. This simply means you have earned the right to continue training." Maya felt a surge of pride mixed with relief. She had done it. She had survived the most notorious week of military training in existence. More importantly, she had done it without compromising who she was or what she believed in. But, even as she celebrated this milestone, she knew the challenges were far from over. The remaining weeks of training would bring new tests, new opportunities to fail, and new chances to prove herself worthy of joining one of the most elite military units in the world. The weekend brought much-needed rest and recovery, but it also brought reflection on what lay ahead. Maya used the time to call her family, to eat real food, and to process what she had experienced during Hell Week. "You sound different," her mother observed during their phone call. "I feel different," Maya admitted. "Stronger. More sure of myself." She didn't tell her mother about the challenges she still faced, about the instructors who seemed determined to break her, or about the constant pressure of being one of the few women in a traditionally male program. Instead, she focused on the positive, the bonds she was forming with her fellow recruits, the skills she was learning, and the progress she was making toward her goal. When training resumed the following Monday, Maya noticed a subtle change in how some of the instructors treated her. She had proven herself during Hell Week, and, while they still pushed her hard, there seemed to be a grudging respect in their approach. Thompson, however, remained as antagonistic as ever. Don't think surviving Hell Week makes you special, Rodriguez, he told her during the first day back. Lots of people make it through Hell Week. What matters is whether you can handle the rest of the program. Maya simply nodded and replied, "Hoya, Instructor Thompson." The weeks following Hell Week brought new phases of training: diving operations, land warfare, demolitions, and weapons training. Maya excelled in most areas, struggled in some, and gradually built the comprehensive skill set that would define her as a SEAL. The demolitions training was particularly challenging. Working with explosives required absolute precision and attention to detail. A small mistake could result in serious injury or death. Maya found herself fascinated by the technical aspects of the work, but also deeply respectful of the destructive power she was learning to harness. During one exercise, she was paired with Stevens to set charges on a mock target. They had to work in perfect coordination, communicating clearly and double-checking each other's work. "Fuse is set," Stevens reported quietly. "Confirmed," Maya replied, checking his work carefully. "Timer shows 30 seconds. They moved to a safe distance and watched as their charges detonated perfectly, destroying the target completely. Stevens turned to Maya with a grin, the first genuinely friendly expression she had ever seen from him. "Nice work, Rodriguez. That was textbook perfect. You too, Stevens. Good team effort." It was a small moment, but it represented a significant shift in their relationship. The shared challenges and mutual dependence of SEAL training had a way of breaking down barriers and creating bonds that transcended initial prejudices. The land warfare phase introduced them to advanced combat tactics, small unit operations, and survival skills. They spent weeks learning to move silently through different types of terrain, to read the landscape for tactical advantages, and to work together as a coordinated fighting unit. Maya's military background served her well in this phase. She had experience with basic combat operations from her previous Navy assignments, and she was able to build on that foundation to master more advanced concepts. During one night navigation exercise, she was selected as team leader for a mission to infiltrate a mock enemy compound and gather intelligence. It was the first time she had been given leadership responsibility during the program, and she knew it was both an opportunity and a test. "Listen up," she told her 5-person team during their planning session. "We go in quiet, gather the intel, and get out without being detected. Everyone knows their role, everyone sticks to the plan. Questions?" The team executed the mission flawlessly, moving through the darkness like ghosts and completing their objectives without being discovered by the opposing force. When they returned to base, even Thompson seemed grudgingly impressed by their performance. But Maya's biggest test was still ahead. She didn't know it yet, but within days, everything would change in ways that would shake the very foundations of the training program and alter the course of her life forever. The tattoo on her shoulder remained hidden beneath her uniform, but the spirit of the phoenix burned bright within her. She had risen from the ashes of Hell Week stronger and more determined than ever. Whatever came next, she was ready to face it with courage and honor. The morning of the incident started like any other during the advanced training phase. Maya and the remaining 17 recruits were preparing for a challenging evolution that would test their ability to work as a cohesive unit under extreme pressure. They had been training for over 4 months now, and the group had developed into a tight-knit brotherhood that transcended the initial divisions and prejudices. "Today we're doing something special," Senior Chief Morrison announced as they gathered in the pre-dawn darkness. "You're going to participate in a joint training exercise with active SEAL teams from Team 5. This is your chance to see what you're working toward, and their chance to evaluate the next generation of operators." Maya felt a surge of excitement mixed with nervousness. Working alongside actual SEALs was an honor and an opportunity to learn from the best. But she also knew it was another chance to be scrutinized and judged. The exercise involved a complex scenario where the recruits would support an active SEAL team in a simulated hostage rescue operation. Maya's role was to provide communications support and coordinate with naval assets offshore. It was a critical position that required technical expertise and the ability to remain calm under pressure. The SEAL team they were working with was led by Commander Jack Morrison, Senior Chief Morrison's younger brother, though Maya didn't know about the family connection at the time. Commander Morrison was a legendary figure within the SEAL community, with multiple combat deployments and a reputation for excellence that was known throughout the special operations world. As they began their mission briefing, Maya noticed Commander Morrison watching her intently. His gaze wasn't hostile like Thompson's often was, but there was something intense about the way he studied her that made her slightly uncomfortable. "Rodriguez," Commander Morrison called out during the briefing. "You're the calm specialist for this evolution. Everything depends on maintaining contact between the assault team and support elements. Think you can handle that level of responsibility?" "Yes, sir," Maya replied confidently. She had excelled in communications training and was comfortable with the technical equipment. The exercise began at dawn with the SEAL team and recruits moving toward their objective, a mock compound where hostile forces were holding simulated hostages. Maya set up her communications equipment on a hill overlooking the target area, providing her with clear lines of sight to both the assault team and the naval vessels offshore. Everything went smoothly for the first hour. The assault team moved into position while Maya coordinated their movements with the support elements. Her communications were clear and precise, and she was able to provide real-time intelligence updates based on what she could observe from her position. Then, the exercise took an unexpected turn. The opposing force, played by other SEALs acting as hostile forces, launched a coordinated counterattack that hadn't been part of the original scenario. Suddenly, Maya found herself under direct fire from blank ammunition while trying to maintain communications with multiple elements that were now scattered and under pressure. "Viper 1, this is Overwatch," Maya spoke calmly into her radio despite bullets cracking overhead. "You have enemy movement flanking your position from the east. Recommend immediate redeployment to grid reference 234567. Commander Morrison's voice crackled back through her headset. "Overwatch, we're taking heavy fire. Need immediate air support." Maya quickly switched frequencies to contact the helicopter team providing close air support. "Falcon 2-1, this is Overwatch. Request immediate gun run on coordinates I'm about to transmit. Friendly forces are marked with IR strobes." The next 20 minutes were a blur of radio calls, tactical decisions, and split-second timing. Maya found herself essentially coordinating a complex military operation while under simulated fire, making life-or-death decisions that would determine the success or failure of the mission. When enemy forces attempted to overrun her position, she had to physically defend her equipment while continuing to provide communications support. Using the combat skills she had learned over the past months, she engaged the opposing forces with blank ammunition while simultaneously calling in helicopter support. "Falcon 2-1, I need danger close support on my position. Enemy forces are within 50 meters of my location." The helicopter pilot's voice was tense. "Overwatch, that's too close for safety. We can't engage without risking friendly fire." "Negative, Falcon 2-1, Maya replied while changing positions to avoid incoming fire. "I have visual on all friendly forces. You are cleared hot. Repeat, you are cleared hot." It was a gutsy call that could have ended her career if she had been wrong, but Maya was confident in her assessment of the tactical situation. The helicopter engaged the enemy forces, allowing her to maintain her position and continue coordinating the overall operation. The exercise concluded successfully with the hostages rescued and all friendly forces accounted for. As the various teams gathered for the after-action review, Maya noticed Commander Morrison approaching her with an expression she couldn't read. "Rodriguez," he said quietly, "I need to speak with you privately." Maya felt a familiar knot of anxiety form in her stomach. Private conversations with senior officers rarely brought good news, especially for recruits who were still proving themselves. They walked away from the group to a spot where they couldn't be overheard. Commander Morrison studied her face for a long moment before speaking. "That was exceptional work today," he began. "Your communications were flawless, your tactical decisions were sound, and you showed real leadership under pressure. But I want to ask you about something else." Maya's heart rate increased. Had she made a mistake she wasn't aware of? Had someone complained about her performance? "During the exercise, when you were changing positions under fire, your shirt got torn," Commander Morrison continued. "I caught a glimpse of a tattoo on your shoulder. A phoenix, very detailed work." Maya's hand instinctively moved toward her shoulder. She had been careful to keep the tattoo covered throughout training, but the intensity of the exercise had caused her to focus more on survival than on maintaining her uniform's integrity. "Yes, sir," she replied carefully, unsure where this conversation was heading. "Would you mind showing it to me?" Commander Morrison asked. His tone was neutral, but there was something urgent in his eyes. Maya hesitated. Showing a tattoo to a senior officer felt inappropriate, but refusing a direct request would be even worse. She carefully lifted the torn sleeve of her shirt to reveal the intricate phoenix design. Commander Morrison's face went pale. He stared at the tattoo for several long moments, his mouth slightly open as if he had seen a ghost. "My God," he whispered. "Miguel Santos did that work." Maya's heart skipped a beat. How could this officer possibly know who had created her tattoo? "Yes, sir," she replied, her voice barely above a whisper. "How did you know?" Commander Morrison's eyes filled with tears that he quickly tried to hide. He turned away for a moment, composing himself before facing her again. "Miguel Santos was my teammate," he said quietly. "We served together for 8 years. He saved my life more times than I can count. When he was medically retired after that IED explosion in Afghanistan, it broke my heart. I haven't seen him since the ceremony when they pinned his Purple Heart." Maya felt the world shift around her. The artist who had created her tattoo, her father's friend who had encouraged her to pursue her dreams, was a hero to this man who could make or break her career. "He told me he was working on something special," Commander Morrison continued. "A phoenix for a young woman who reminded him of his own daughter. Someone with the spirit of a warrior and the heart of a protector. He said she was going to be a SEAL someday, and that the phoenix would give her strength when she needed it most." Tears began to roll down Maya's cheeks despite her efforts to maintain military bearing. The connection she was discovering felt like destiny, as if all the struggles and challenges of the past months had been leading to this moment. "Miguel talked about you," Commander Morrison said. "He didn't use your name, but he described your father's service, your own determination, and your dream of becoming a SEAL. He said you had the spirit that the teams needed, even if some people would have a hard time seeing it." Maya's voice cracked when she finally spoke. "He never told me he knew anyone from the teams. He just said he believed in me and wanted to give me something that would help me remember who I was when things got difficult." "That sounds like Miguel," Commander Morrison replied with a sad smile. "He always looked out for others, always tried to help people reach their potential. The fact that he chose to mark you with his art tells me everything I need to know about who you are and what you're capable of." They stood in silence for several minutes, both processing the emotional weight of the discovery. Maya felt as if a missing piece of a puzzle had suddenly fallen into place, connecting her past to her present in ways she had never imagined. "Sir," she finally said, "may I ask how Miguel is doing?" "My father and I lost touch with him after I deployed to Afghanistan." Commander Morrison's expression became sad. "Miguel passed away 2 years ago. Cancer, probably related to his exposure to chemicals during his deployments. He fought it for a long time, but, in the end, the war got him just the same." Maya felt as if she had been punched in the stomach. Miguel had been more than just a tattoo artist, he had been a mentor, a connection to her father's military service, and a symbol of the SEAL community she was fighting to join. Learning of his death felt like losing a piece of her own history. "I'm sorry for your loss, sir," she said quietly. "He was a good man who meant a lot to my family." "He was the best of us," Commander Morrison replied. "And the fact that he believed in you strongly enough to create that masterpiece tells me that you belong here, regardless of what anyone else might say." The conversation was interrupted by Senior Chief Morrison calling for the group to reassemble for the formal after-action review. As they walked back toward the others, Commander Morrison spoke quietly to Maya. "I want you to know that Miguel would be proud of what you've accomplished here. Hell Week, your performance today, the way you've conducted yourself throughout training, you're exactly the kind of operator the teams need." Maya nodded, too emotional to speak. The weight of Miguel's faith in her, combined with Commander Morrison's words of encouragement, felt both inspiring and overwhelming. During the formal debrief, Commander Morrison addressed the entire group of recruits, but Maya felt as if his words were directed specifically at her. "Today you worked alongside active SEAL operators as equals," he said. "Some of you distinguished yourselves with exceptional performance under pressure. Remember that being a SEAL isn't just about physical toughness or technical skills. It's about character, leadership, and the ability to make the right decisions when lives are on the line. As the exercise concluded and the teams prepared to return to their respective bases, Commander Morrison approached Maya one final time. "Rodriguez, I want you to have something," he said, pulling a small object from his pocket. It was a challenge coin from SEAL Team 5, worn smooth from years of handling. This belonged to Miguel. He gave it to me after our last operation together, and I've carried it ever since. I think he would want you to have it now. Maya accepted the coin with trembling hands, feeling the weight of its history and significance. On one side was the SEAL trident, on the other was an inscription: courage, honor, commitment. "Thank you, sir," she managed to say through her tears. "I'll treasure this." "Make Miguel proud," Commander Morrison replied. "And, remember, you already belong here. Don't let anyone convince you otherwise." As Maya watched Commander Morrison walk away, she felt a profound sense of connection to something larger than herself. The tattoo on her shoulder was no longer just personal art, it was a symbol of lineage, of connection to warriors who had come before her and who had faced their own battles with courage and determination. That evening, as she sat on her bunk holding Miguel's challenge coin, Maya reflected on the extraordinary chain of events that had led to this moment. A chance-torn shirt during a training exercise had revealed not just a tattoo, but a connection to the very heart of the SEAL community. She thought about Miguel, about the hours he had spent creating the phoenix that now marked her as one of his own. She thought about Commander Morrison's tears when he recognized the artwork, and about the pride in his voice when he spoke of Miguel's service. Most importantly, she thought about the responsibility that came with this newfound knowledge. She wasn't just representing herself anymore, she was carrying forward the legacy of a fallen warrior who had believed in her potential even before she believed in it herself. The phoenix on her shoulder seemed to burn with new meaning, its wings spread wide as if ready to carry her through whatever challenges remained. Miguel's spirit lived on through his art, and through the determination of a young woman who refused to let his faith in her be misplaced. Maya knew that word of her connection to Miguel Santos would spread through the SEAL community, and that people would watch her with new interest and expectation. But she also knew that she was ready for that scrutiny. She had already proven herself through months of grueling training, and she would continue to prove herself through action rather than words. As she drifted off to sleep that night, Maya felt a sense of peace she hadn't experienced since the beginning of training. She was no longer fighting just for her own dreams, she was fighting to honor the memory of a warrior who had seen something special in her before she even saw it in herself. Word spread through the SEAL training compound faster than wildfire. Within hours of the joint exercise, everyone from instructors to support staff seemed to know about Maya Rodriguez's connection to Miguel Santos. The revelation transformed her from just another recruit fighting to prove herself into something much more significant, a living link to a beloved fallen warrior. Senior Chief Morrison was the first to approach her the next morning, his weathered face showing an expression Maya had never seen before. There was respect there, mixed with curiosity and what might have been regret. "Rodriguez," he said quietly as she prepared her gear for the day's training. "I heard about your conversation with my brother yesterday. Miguel Santos was before my time in the teams, but his reputation was legendary. Every SEAL knows his story." Maya nodded, still processing how quickly her world had changed. "He was a good man, Senior Chief. He believed in me when I wasn't sure I believed in myself." "That was Miguel's way," Morrison replied. "He had an eye for potential, for seeing what people could become rather than just what they were. If he marked you with that phoenix, it means something. It means you belong here." The change in Morrison's demeanor was subtle but unmistakable. He still pushed her hard during training, still demanded excellence in everything she did, but there was an underlying current of respect that hadn't been there before. More importantly, she noticed other instructors beginning to treat her differently as well. Even Thompson, who had been her most persistent antagonist, seemed to reassess his approach. He still maintained his tough exterior, but the personal animosity that had characterized their interactions began to fade. "Santos was a hell of a warrior," Thompson told her during a break in weapons training. "If he saw something in you worth believing in, maybe I was wrong to doubt it." Maya appreciated the acknowledgement, but she also knew that her connection to Miguel couldn't be the only thing that defined her value as a potential SEAL. She had to continue proving herself through performance and character, not just through association with a fallen hero. The remaining weeks of training took on a different quality. Maya found herself being sought out by other recruits who wanted to hear stories about Miguel, about his service and his sacrifice. She shared what she knew, but she was careful not to embellish or claim knowledge she didn't possess. "He told me that being a SEAL was about more than just completing missions," she explained to Johnson and Stevens during one evening conversation. "He said it was about taking care of your teammates, about making sure everyone came home. He lived that philosophy every day of his service." Stevens, who had become one of Maya's strongest allies since Hell Week, nodded thoughtfully. "That explains why Commander Morrison got so emotional when he saw your tattoo. Losing a teammate like that must leave a mark that never really heals." The conversation was interrupted by the arrival of a visitor that none of them expected, Admiral Patricia Chen, the highest-ranking female officer in naval special warfare. Her presence at the training compound sent ripples of excitement and nervousness through the entire recruit class. Admiral Chen was a legend in her own right, one of the first women to break through significant barriers in special operations and a tireless advocate for expanding opportunities for female service members. Her visit was unprecedented, and speculation ran wild about why she had come. The answer became clear the next morning when Maya was summoned to a private meeting with the Admiral, Senior Chief Morrison, and Commander Jack Morrison, who had returned specifically for this conversation. "Petty Officer Rodriguez," Admiral Chen began, her voice carrying the authority of decades of leadership, "I've been following your progress through this program with great interest. Your performance has been exemplary, and your connection to Miguel Santos has brought you to my attention for reasons beyond just training scores." Maya felt her heart rate increase. Meetings with admirals rarely happened to recruits, and she couldn't imagine what this conversation might lead to. "Miguel Santos was more than just a decorated SEAL," Admiral Chen continued. "He was a pioneer in developing new training methodologies, a mentor to countless young operators, and an advocate for evolution within our community. His loss was felt throughout the entire special operations world." The Admiral paused, studying Maya's face carefully before continuing. "Before his death, Miguel was working on a project with our leadership team. He was developing recommendations for how to better integrate female operators into SEAL teams, based on his observations of successful women in other special operations units around the world. He believed that the right women, with the right training and support, could bring capabilities that would make our team stronger." Maya remained silent, sensing that this conversation was leading somewhere significant but not sure what response was expected from her. "Miguel left behind detailed notes about his vision for the future of our community," Admiral Chen said. "In those notes, he specifically mentioned a young woman he had met through her father's connections. He described her as having the physical capabilities, mental toughness, and character necessary to succeed as a SEAL. He wrote that if she ever entered the training program, she should be watched carefully because she represented the future of our community." The weight of this revelation hit Maya like a physical force. Miguel hadn't just created her tattoo as an act of kindness, he had been documenting her potential as part of a larger vision for the evolution of SEAL teams. "Sir," Maya managed to say, "I had no idea that Miguel saw me in those terms. To me, he was just my father's friend who encouraged me to pursue my goals." "That was Miguel's way," Commander Morrison added. "He saw potential where others saw problems. He understood that progress sometimes requires taking risks on people who don't fit the traditional mold." Admiral Chen leaned forward, her expression becoming more intense. "Petty Officer Rodriguez, you are currently on track to become one of the first female SEALs in naval history. Your performance in this program has been outstanding, and your connection to Miguel Santos has given us an opportunity to honor his vision while advancing the capabilities of our community." Maya felt overwhelmed by the magnitude of what she was hearing. She had known that her gender made her part of a historic group, but she hadn't fully understood the broader implications of her success or failure. "With your permission," Admiral Chen continued, "we would like to document your training experience as part of a broader study on integration of female operators into special operations units. This would involve additional observation, interviews, and analysis, but it would also provide valuable data that could help future female candidates succeed." The request felt both honoring and daunting. Maya understood that agreeing would mean accepting additional scrutiny and responsibility, but it would also mean contributing to something larger than her own personal goals. "Admiral," Maya replied carefully, "I'm honored by your confidence, but I want to make sure I understand what you're asking. Are you suggesting that my training be used as a case study for future integration efforts?" "Exactly," Admiral Chen confirmed. "Your success or failure will influence policies and procedures that affect women who come after you." Miguel understood this burden, and he believed you were strong enough to carry it. Maya thought about Miguel's faith in her, about the phoenix on her shoulder that had already changed her life in ways she couldn't have imagined. She thought about the responsibility of representing not just herself, but all the women who might follow in her footsteps. "I accept," she said firmly. "If Miguel believed I could contribute to the future of this community, then I want to honor that belief." The remainder of Maya's training took place under unprecedented scrutiny. Researchers documented her performance, psychologists analyzed her responses to stress, and leadership experts studied her interactions with teammates and instructors. Through it all, she maintained the focus and determination that had carried her through the previous months. The final phase of training included advanced combat operations, long-range reconnaissance, and complex mission planning. Maya excelled in all areas, but she was particularly noted for her ability to build trust and cooperation within diverse teams. During one critical exercise, she was placed in command of a mixed group that included both SEAL trainees and experienced operators. The mission required infiltrating hostile territory, gathering intelligence, and extracting without detection. Maya's leadership style, which emphasized clear communication and shared decision-making, proved highly effective. "Rodriguez has a natural ability to bring out the best in her teammates," noted one evaluator. "She doesn't lead through intimidation or dominance, but through competence and genuine concern for mission success and team welfare." As graduation approached, Maya reflected on the extraordinary journey that had brought her to this point. She thought about the young woman who had arrived at Coronado 8 months earlier, uncertain and intimidated despite her determination. She thought about the challenges she had overcome, the relationships she had built, and the legacy she was now part of. The night before graduation, she received an unexpected visitor. Rosa Santos, Miguel's widow, had traveled from Arizona to attend the ceremony. Through tears, she explained that Miguel had spoken of Maya many times before his death, always expressing confidence that she would succeed in achieving her goals. "He would be so proud," Rosa said as she embraced Maya. "You've become everything he believed you could be." Rosa presented Maya with a gift, a framed photograph of Miguel in his SEAL uniform, along with a handwritten note he had left for her. The note was brief but powerful. "Maya, by the time you read this, you will have proven that courage has no gender and that warriors come in many forms. The phoenix I created for you was never just art, it was a prophecy. Rise always, fall never. Your friend and brother in service, Miguel." Graduation day dawned clear and bright, with families, friends, and military dignitaries gathering to witness the culmination of one of the most challenging training programs in the world. Of the 48 recruits who had begun the journey, only 14 remained to receive their SEAL tridents. Maya stood in formation with her surviving classmates, each one transformed by months of shared struggle and triumph. Johnson stood to her right, Stevens to her left, and around them were the men who would become her brothers in every sense that mattered. When Admiral Chen stepped forward to pin the SEAL trident on Maya's uniform, the moment felt surreal. The golden emblem that represented so much sacrifice and dedication was finally hers, earned through months of proving herself worthy of the honor. "Petty Officer Rodriguez," Admiral Chen said quietly as she attached the trident, "you carry with you the hopes and dreams of many who will follow in your path. Miguel Santos's vision lives on through your achievement." As the ceremony concluded and families gathered to celebrate, Maya found herself surrounded by people whose lives had been touched by her journey. Her parents, who had supported her through years of preparation and training. Her classmates, who had accepted her as an equal and a teammate. Military leaders who saw her success as validation of their commitment to evolution and progress. But perhaps the most meaningful moment came when Commander Morrison approached her with a final gift. "This belonged to Miguel," he said, handing her a worn leather journal. He kept notes about training techniques, leadership philosophy, and his vision for the future of special operations. "I think he would want you to have it, to continue the work he started." Maya accepted the journal with reverence, knowing that it contained the thoughts and wisdom of a warrior who had believed in her potential before she fully believed in it herself. The responsibility of carrying forward Miguel's legacy felt both humbling and inspiring. As she looked around at the celebration surrounding her, Maya understood that this graduation was not an ending but a beginning. She was now part of an elite community that traced its lineage back through decades of warriors who had faced impossible challenges and emerged victorious. The phoenix on her shoulder had indeed proven prophetic. She had risen from the ashes of doubt and skepticism to claim her place among America's finest warriors. More importantly, she had opened doors for others who would follow, proving that excellence and courage were not limited by gender or background. Years later, Maya would look back on this day as the moment when her real mission began, not just serving as a SEAL, but serving as an example and advocate for expanding opportunities in special operations. Miguel's vision of a more inclusive and capable community would continue to guide her throughout her career. The young woman who had once worried about fitting into a male-dominated world had instead helped reshape that world, creating space for others who shared her determination and dedication. The phoenix had risen, and, in doing so, had shown that the sky was not the limit. It was just the beginning of what was possible when courage and character aligned with opportunity and support. Maya Rodriguez, Naval Special Warfare Operator, walked into her future carrying the traditions of the past and the promise of tomorrow, ready to serve her country with honor and to prove that Miguel Santos's faith in her had been well placed. The tattoo that had once been hidden beneath her uniform now represented a legacy that would inspire generations of warriors to come.